Tonight, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi feigning outrage over the GOP tax cuts. Suddenly, she's against adding to the deficit? That's fun. Charlie Hurt has the story. Plus, Robert Mueller now reportedly looking into the Trump family's finances and a $300 million German loan. Glenn Hall has details. And does the Pentagon really have a secret microwave bomb to take out North Korean missiles? Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters has the scoop. Strap yourself in because it is time to fly. If there's one benefit to constant D.C. bickering, it's how hypocrisy happily shows itself when one party gets mad. And they're always mad. Well, not Nancy Pelosi. No, she was uncharacteristically calm and measured when she responded to the House vote to go to committee on tax reform. And she used only facts and data to subtly express her displeasure. Nance?
The debate on health care is life-death. This is Armageddon. This is a very big deal because you know why? There's really a very hard way to come back from this. They take us further, more deeply into debt. What can you do?
What can you do? Exaggerate, use hyperbole, claim people are going to die always and immediately. And when that doesn't work, call John Conyers an icon. Nancy wasn't alone wallowing the slop of her tears and disgust. Chuck Schumer was also mired in political mulch.
With this reckless ramrodding of a bill, Republicans are reaching heretofore unreached heights of hypocrisy, and the Senate is descending to a new low of chicanery.
Chicanery, heretofore. Oh, so many big words from a guy whose name rhymes with suck tumor or muck bloomer or never mind. So where's Good Time Bernie while the House is on fire? Reaching for his senatorial hose on Twitter, writing, historians will look back on December 1st, 2017 and conclude this was one of the great robberies in U.S. history because Republicans are looting the Treasury. Republicans are wildly hypocritical about spending, but looting the Treasury would be Sanders' $30 trillion Medicare for All plan, which would sink the country into such a howling depression, folks would be so broke, they'd need a lot more than Medicare. Yeah, they'd be gobbling handfuls of pills to escape Bernie's evil utopia. Democrats want to bloat the deficit like a fat kid in a candy factory. Republicans would be wise to trim that $1.5 trillion with cuts and enjoy the economic bounty that follows when tax cuts are coupled with fiscal restraint. Instead, they open themselves up to this ordinary brand of Democratic hysteria. And while it's predictable and unproductive, it is so much fun to watch Nancy's head explode like a Gallagher watermelon. You're fruity and I like it. Welcome to the show. I'm Kennedy. So behind all the bluster on the left and the smoke and mirrors on the right, is this tax bill Armageddon or salvation? Joining me now, Washington Times opinion editor and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt is here. Welcome back to the show, Charlie.
I just want to know, what exactly is a schmuck tumor?
Muck tumor, actually.
A muck tumor.
It's not good. And it's the kind of cancer that grows in the demented sandbox of statism.
Luckily, it's terminal.
Yes, well, one would hope, but statism is catching as Democrats' heads are catching fire over this tax plan, and all of a sudden they're responsible fiscal stewards. Please explain to me the outrage, Charlie.
It's incredible. And you're right. The hypocrisy, it grows on both sides, and we see it every time one of these things come along. But the idea that Democrats are now concerned about debt and spending is absolutely preposterous. It's the most preposterous type of hypocrisy we ever see out of here. And, you know, the real problem here is, and in all seriousness, if Republicans wanted to radically overhaul the tax system, which I wish they would, you could abolish the IRS, you could do away with the income tax, and end the war on work. That's the most, if there was the filthiest perversion of our tax code is the fact that the federal government, it punishes work and it rewards indolence. And if you switch that one simple thing in our tax code, I think that would do more than anything else to fix everything that's wrong in this country.
I'm buying what you're selling, man, and I haven't even visited
You're
a
smoking what
dispensary.
I'm rolling.
Whatever dispensary you've opened in Colorado, buddy, I am lined up before the doors fly open. And I have to tell you, you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, we're not going to have the kind of radical tax reform that is necessary to have honest reform and economic growth in this country, because there is such a disconnect between spending and taxing, and the budget and the tax plans of both parties, and they should absolutely be ashamed of themselves. And when people talk about the establishment, they talk about these two cartels that are so dug in. They have this ongoing fake war with each other that's just a grand distraction from the fact that they're robbing us blind. Other than that, what do you like about the tax bill, Charlie?
Well, I get that Republicans need some sort of victory here, and I understand that. But honestly, and I also know that in Washington, everyone's always going to play small ball, of course, except for Barack Obama. Barack Obama had no fear of going like huge as he did with the Obamacare bill.
Yeah.
But I wish that Republicans, even if they had just sort of made a valiant attempt to do something radical like ending the war on work in Washington. And I think that somebody like Donald Trump would have been a perfect person to sort of lead that fight, because if you look at the support he got from where he peeled off Democrats, who did he peel off? He peeled off working Democrats, and that's a rarity in the Democratic Party. Most of the people in the Democratic Party either don't work or they work in Hollywood or something like that. But honestly, it's those workers. And if you made a campaign to end the war on work, I think that Donald Trump would solidify his base, and I think that it would, even if it didn't succeed, it would have been a great message, a great fight to fight.
No, it's really funny. Today I was walking by a bin at work where they have toys that you can donate to Marine families, and I was laughing to myself like, wouldn't it be great if hardworking middle-class families were having a tough time making ends meet, who were completely forgotten by both parties, if they had some sort of a bin like that so they could just get a little bit of help during the holidays. Yeah. But alas, things like that do not exist because there's too much government, there's too much regulation, there's too much meddling, there's too much taxation. And with that, it limits freedom and economic growth, and that's what we have to fight against every day. Charlie Hurt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, as Congress debates tax reform, they're also grappling with a wave of sexual misconduct allegations. Today, Congressman John Conyers stepped down just as another accuser came forward. Conyers has held his Detroit area seat since 1965, making him the longest-serving member of Congress. Conyers called a local radio station this morning and was very defiant. Listen.
My legacy can't be compromised or diminished in any way by what we're going through now. This too shall pass. And I want you to know that my legacy will continue through my children. I have a great family here, and especially in my oldest boy, John Conyers III, who incidentally I endorsed to replace me in my seat in Congress.
What is he, a Viscount? Conyers' endorsement of his son is complicated by the fact that his grandnephew, Ian Conyers, has also announced that he'll be running for the open seat. And just yesterday, Elisa Grubbs, who reportedly worked for Conyers for more than a decade, said the congressman groped her during a church service. So is Conyers just the first domino to fall? Let me go to my eagle-eyed party panel tonight. It's Fox News 24/7, Fox News Headlines 24/7 reporter Carly Shimkus is here, joined by comedian and host of the Part of the Problem podcast, which is apparently giving out crates of hot sauce for the holidays. Dave Smith joins me, and former State Department spokesperson and Fox News contributor Marie Harf in the house. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You bring hot sauce with you?
No, I gave it all out.
That's
all out.
unfortunate. Yeah, well,
A lot of struggling middle-class people.
in that toy bin, someone was hoping for a Barbie. They're getting Cholula. So let's talk about Conyers a little bit. He says that he wants his eldest son, John Conyers III, to take the seat. What do you think about that, given that there is a special election that will be triggered upon his official resignation?
Right, there's a process here, and the voters of this district will decide who they want to represent them. And I think you will see this, John Conyers made the right
Wouldn't it be
decision
funny
to
if they
step
sent
down.
Kid Rock?
I mean, funny's one word for it. But this is one of the questions, right? John Conyers made the right decision. We now have a Republican congressman, Representative Farenthold, who has admitted to paying over $80,000 to someone. People are calling on him to step down. People are talking about Al
didn't pay it,
Franken.
though.
Well, the taxpayer, we paid it.
Exactly,
We paid it.
yeah.
So this is, if all of these members, some of them who have been accused, decide to step down, we're going to see special elections. We're going to see governors getting to appoint people. This is going to get really messy, as it should, but we're in for the long haul.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting, and it's definitely going to tweak how people run for office, and maybe how voters
Hopefully.
internalize and choose candidates in the future.
Right.
It's really interesting though, because you see someone like Al Franken, and until Democrats get rid of everyone, they really don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing Republicans for these same flaws in human nature.
Right, and it's one guy stepping down who's like 138. I don't think it really proves
And his
that
son
there's like
is 75.
Yeah, I mean it's like right.
Wow.
Like I don't think it really proves that people are going to step down, and I don't think there's any evidence that voters. I think this guy would have won another election, and it looks like Roy Moore has a good shot to win his election. So I don't really think there's any proof that this is going to get congressmen to step down. And again, I mean, that's...
He's not really stepping down. I mean, he was basically like, this too shall pass, taking absolutely
Right.
zero
And
responsibility.
informing you that my legacy is unaffected by this. Like, I think that's actually something we decide, not you. And I think
Right.
groping women should probably affect your legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking advantage of vulnerable people, a
That's the-
57-year-old woman.
The
who-
number one thing, on church, my God, the church thing is shocking. But the number one thing on his mind, of course, today is absolutely his legacy, which is why he already said, on an aside, that he is endorsing his son. Christmas is going to be really interesting at that household because of the whole grandnephew aspect of this.
I love the grandnephew.
The grandnephew.
Go ahead and get in there, Ian.
There aren't enough grandnephews
You little
walking around.
rabble-rouser.
But we have to also remember that one of the other surprising aspects to this was Democrats' initial response. Of course, we talked a lot about Nancy Pelosi and how she reacted. My biggest shock is that it took John Conyers this long to resign because there was that support initially from Nancy Pelosi. Democrats pride themselves in being the party of women. And so they really flubbed this one up, in my opinion, initially.
Yeah, I think both parties have, but
Yes.
So speaking
Yes,
of
that's
which,
true.
let's move on to Alabama. The Republican National Committee has reinstated its support for controversial Republican candidate Roy Moore, tossing him a huge financial lifeline. Good choice, everyone, with just a week till the election. You go ahead and bring me your feud on Twitter right now. I'm ready for it. With a razor-thin margin in the polls, it could be the boost the accused child predator needs to win the race. As you know, Moore, of course, denies harassing or even dating teenage girls back in the 70s, calling all of his accusers liars. Last week, he said it was a conspiracy by gays and liberals to bring him down, but now one of his accusers has revealed love letters signed by Moore from when she was 17 and he was in his 30s. And while dating a 17-year-old is not against the law, it suggests Moore was lying when he said he had never met any of his accusers. So will voters ignore that and instead follow President Trump's lead and support Moore? This is very interesting because I think if all of these allegations had surfaced just a couple weeks later, it might have spelled the end. But it's almost like too much time has passed since the Washington Post revelations and the election.
That's right. And it's stunning to me that the RNC withdrew their support for him when it looked like he may not win. And now they're throwing their support back to him. It looks like a calculation about who would win, not necessarily the principle of it, because now they're supporting him again. So we are in this moment in this country where we are reckoning with a lot of people being accused. Media has moved quickly. Comedy has moved quickly to fire people, to push people out of their jobs. Politics is behind the curve on this
Absolutely.
one.
Something
And we'll
I talked
see
about
what
a
the
lot last
voters
week.
I know, and we'll see what the voters decide here. But either we believe women who are credible, like these women, or we don't. And it's stunning to me. You said the Democratic Party was behind the eight ball on this. The Republican Party.
They're both behind the eight ball. They're both hypocrites,
right.
and they're doing the same thing. They're just protecting their own power.
Which is a bad thing.
It's not like Americans benefit from it. It's not like, people who are working hard are like, yeah, they really got my back in this thing.
But if he wins,
a
every
child molester might become a U.S.
Republican-
senator. Woo!
But
But
I
if
think
he
the
wins,
point
every
is,
Republican's going to have to answer for this now.
well, yeah, and a lot of Republicans tried to distance themselves
They
from
did.
him, and it's
Right.
a very divided
They're
party.
asking for him
This
to drop out of the race.
But here's the thing: there's this huge gap between
Mitt
the
Romney said he's not
Republican,
inviting him to the temple in
which
Salt
does
Lake.
nothing but help him. It does nothing but help Roy Moore, and the wall-to-wall media
Yeah.
coverage did nothing but help Roy Moore. Okay, this is the disconnect. The Republican establishment wanted to tinker
It's
with
the
the
one
rules
politician
right
I've
before.
seen use the
Yes.
Trump model successfully.
Well, that's
Everyone
right.
else has tried to do it,
Look,
has not succeeded.
these guys, the Republican electorate, are overwhelmingly convinced that the media are liars and that they don't have their interest at heart. And I gotta say, they're kind of right about that. Now, I don't think they're right about Roy Moore, but the point is that they absolutely do not trust the media. They think this is a
But
hit job.
that's what I said all along. Roy Moore wins even if he loses because he gets to blame the
Yeah.
twin titans of destruction, the GOP establishment, the Washington establishment, essentially, and the press.
That's right. And I think there was like a poll, like 70% of Republicans in Alabama don't believe
Yeah.
that these allegations to be true, which means that there are so many
They would
people
if they were
out there
about Doug Jones.
that think that this is a liberal smear campaign, which really compels people to turn out to vote. We talked about Roy Moore not getting help by Mitt McConnell. Somebody else that's not helping Roy Moore at all either is probably President Trump. He doesn't have a lot of sway over Alabama voters, given the fact that his guy, Luther Strange, lost in the primary. So Roy Moore might not actually need the president's endorsement, which means that the president really loses here because now, you know, he's going to face the criticism of backing an alleged child predator
want the
for really no
win,
reason.
But it reminds me of the sayings, beware your dreams, for they may come true. The panel is a dream come true. They're coming up a little bit later. First up, however, as Robert Mueller continues the Russia investigation, now a report claims the special counsel is looking into a large Drummond Banks relationship with the president. We'll explain and talk about new calls from Mueller to step down next. Welcome back. Special counsel Robert Mueller is following the money in the Russia probe and has reportedly subpoenaed Deutsche Bank's financial records for $300 million in loans they gave to Donald Trump before he became president. It's unclear exactly what it is Team Mueller is looking for. However, one of Trump's lawyers, Jay Sekulow, claims the story is false and that there has been no subpoena. But as Mueller turns the heat up on Trump, a growing number of critics are turning up the heat on Mueller, with Wall Street Journal's editorial board publishing a piece that says, quote, Mr. Mueller is too conflicted to investigate the FBI and should step down in favor of someone more credible. The board went on to say that, quote, while there is no evidence so far of Trump-Russia collusion, House investigators have turned up enough material to suggest that anti-Trump motives may have driven Mr. Comey's FBI investigation. So is it time to investigate the investigator? And if not, what comes next in an investigation that's quickly turning into a rendition of Who's on First? Joining me now, he's on second. Chief editor for Dow Jones Newswires, Glenn Hall is back. Welcome back.
Hello.
So let's talk a little bit about this Wall Street Journal editorial board piece, because they're saying that essentially Mueller has to go. He had a compromised agent, kept it secret for too long. It betrays a bias in his investigation. So what are the facts?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, I don't speak for the Wall Street Journal editorial board, but what I can say is the general gist of this is that if you have an agent inside the investigation, Mueller's investigation, one of the most senior agents, who has been recused because he had been making some internal messaging critical of the president and the target of the investigation, and also was the same person who was leading the investigation into the Hillary Clinton email situation, and then you don't bring that to light. You don't tell Congress, and you keep that under wraps.
You don't tell him that he's been removed or why he's been
removed
taken off the
for a
job.
long time.
Yeah.
It opens up your whole investigation into some scrutiny, I would think. And members of Congress certainly think so. And, I think so that's the beginning of undermining the credibility of the investigation. I'm not saying it does that, but it's something certainly the president has taken to Twitter to try to accomplish.
Well, I think that's also something that it's fair game, and it's a question that should be asked, because are Robert Mueller and James Comey too close to the FBI? Obviously, Comey is a part of this investigation. He's the one who spurred the investigation.
Those who defend Mueller say that he immediately recused the agent, and because there was an inspector general's investigation going on that is yet to be concluded, that made some complications in terms of disclosure.
Now we're hearing that Robert Mueller is probing Deutsche Bank and that $300 million loan or a series of loans that they gave to the president. Did the president fully disclose those loans?
What we have been told is one of the big concerns here is that the president previously may have made personal guarantees related to that loan. So then, does somebody else have a call on the president in terms of repaying those loans?
You're also going to learn a lot more about the president's finances through these kinds of massive disclosures than you would if he released his tax returns, which is something that the Democrats have been angling for a couple of years now.
So the big question is whether this signals that the investigation is moving beyond pure interference with the election charges or obstruction of justice charges and into some other category or not. That's what people are wondering. We don't have the answer to that yet.
Well, no, I'm sure Democrats will tell you that it's absolutely obstruction. And Trump supporters will say it's all above board. I'm sure the answer lies somewhere in the middle, but I don't know if any of it adds up to collusion, whatever that is. So this may still be a big waste of time and money.
They haven't brought that out yet. We don't know the answer to that question. We don't know if we will know the answer, but the investigation itself is a little tainted now.
It is. It's tainted love, and many people have fallen out of love with Robert Mueller. Glenn Hall, thank you so much. Nice to see you. Coming up, the panel returns to discuss protest Queen Jane Fonda's praising of Colin Kaepernick. What a delightful couple. Not since Brigitte Nielsen and Flavor Flav. And speaking of commies, the saber rattling from North Korea continues, but a new report says the U.S. military has weapons that could block their missiles using microwave popcorn technology. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters joins me to discuss next. Dance party. All right, look out, Kim Jong-un, because the Pentagon reportedly has a top secret new weapon in the standoff with North Korea, and it all comes down to microwaves. According to NBC, the sophisticated new microwave bomb can be dropped on the communist regime, and the microwave energy would then interfere with ground controls and power circuits within the North's deadly long-range missiles, in essence, rendering the whole system useless. This comes on the heels of North Korea boasting that they have an ICBM that can reach anywhere in the U.S., though experts have disputed those claims. So will America be able to stop North Korean missiles before they launch, or will this just end up making popcorn, which is delicious, but not necessarily useful? Joining me now, Fox News strategic analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters. Back on the story. Welcome back, Lieutenant Colonel.
Hey, that's speaking to the Duchess of Doom on this one, right?
Am I the Duchess of Doom?
On North Korea here.
Wow, that's great.
Hey, you're just great on all these counts. You've got all these things going.
Oh, Lieutenant Colonel, you make my black heart sing. So let's talk a little bit about this microwave technology. Is it real, and can it work?
Yes, it's real. No, it won't solve all our North Korean problems.
Maybe not all of them, but what about the really big ones, like the nuclear missiles?
Well, if it were positioned in exactly the right place, launched at exactly the right time, when the North Koreans were in their most vulnerable position, it really would help. But, you know, it's a mistake for Americans to fall for the idea that one wonder weapon is going to solve all our problems. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. What you need, now, microwave weapons could be a terrific part of a comprehensive effort to destroy the nuclear and missile systems in North Korea.
While limiting civilian casualties?
Well, yeah, well, it's going to microwave their microwaves, but yes, it would limit civilian casualties, and we always try to limit them. But to be honest with you, Kennedy, if we are compelled to use military force to destroy North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, there are going to be civilian casualties. There are going to be a lot of them. It's going to take a while. It's going to be really messy, and it will probably result in regime change one way or the other. So the reason I say all this is because I think we've been hearing about North Korea for so long that viewers are a bit inured. Oh, well, you know, boy cried wolf, North Korea again. No, it's serious now. Yeah. The clock is ticking. It's midnight at the Last Chance Strategic Saloon. We have maybe a year to a year and a half before North Korea could do real damage if they're program
I
proceeds
think
on
that's
track.
a generous timeline. So I guess the ultimate question is the goal to have China engage in military action.
Well, the goal is to have China engage in economic action.
Yeah.
And, and the Trump administration has talked a good fight on China. But when it comes to the clinch, the Trump administration has been unwilling to threaten a trade war.
Yeah.
Short of that, if you're not willing to threaten a trade war with China, you're going to have a shooting war with North Korea. And nobody in their right mind wants that to happen. The Chinese are trying to have it both ways. They'll pursue some sanctions to placate us for a few months, but they're not really cracking down. Plus, you've got Vladimir Putin allowing or abetting a massive smuggling regime between Russia and North Korea from the Russian Far East. This is really, really tough. But China, yes. When people say China is the key, they're correct. But if China won't turn its key, this is going to end very, very badly. And I hope it won't, because it is going to be a bloody mess. There's no surgical strike side to this. There's no neat, clean, only the microwave weapon fixes everything. This will be bloody.
All right. Well, if only we had Thor's hammer.
On that cheerful note.
Thank you so much. Yay, heading into the last December of our lives. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Duchess of Doom. Nicely done. All right, now speaking of communists, actress Jane Fonda is praising unemployed pro-kneeler Colin Kaepernick. The former 49ers quarterback was honored by the ACLU in California on Sunday night. Watch.
We must confront systemic oppression as a doctor would a disease. You identify it, you call it out, you treat it, and you defeat it.
6'9" with the afro. Afterward, Jane took the stage to tell Cap, quote, "You are woke." Fonda, who was also presented with an award, ended her speech by saying, quote, "Keep kneeling until you can stand up." And then she pressed her life alert button. Is it any surprise that it takes so little to impress Hanoi Jane, that communist traitor? The party panel has returned Carly Shimkus, Dave Smith, and Marie Harf. Dave, I will start with you because I think there is a kernel of truth to what Colin Kaepernick started out fighting for and championing. But unfortunately, whatever truth there was there, it has been completely lost by his lack of talent and theatrics.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Occupy Wall Street, where there was this kind of like kernel of truth. There was this bailout, a lot of corruption on Wall Street, and then you get a bunch of socialist propaganda. It's for people who know nothing. And to me, the sign was when Colin Kaepernick was saying we have to stand up against the police brutality and then put a Castro thing on his jacket. Like, I mean, just you have to know something. And look, I think there's a really important discussion around the war on drugs, over policing for profit, mass incarceration. But of course, we're not talking about any of that. We're just talking about white supremacy.
Have never done that. The Castros have never engaged.
Try protesting the way he did in Castro's Cuba and see where that lands.
Yeah, go ahead and kneel for the Cuban national anthem before a baseball game. I'm sure that would.
And of course, I think if we actually talked about things like the war on drugs and like policing for profit and asset forfeiture and things like this, I think you could actually rally a lot of small government people on the conservative side and on the liberal side, anti-police sentiment. But Jane Fonda isn't going to help in that.
All right, Marie.
Colin Kaepernick has always been a very unfortunate champion of this cause, because you're both right. We have to have a conversation in this country about the issues he's raising. Police brutality. When parents of young African-American kids are scared to send them to school because they're afraid of what will happen, that's a problem. And I think other NFL players are actually trying to move this in a better direction. And I've said in the offseason, maybe some NFL players who've kneeled should sit down with some police officers or the police union to actually talk about this issue in a non-political way. Colin Kaepernick has never helped the cause by being its champion. Yeah. But I don't think we should let that distract from the real issues. No,
what's distracting is that Jane Fonda is still a total commie, and her actions during the Vietnam War absolutely unforgivable, and she's shown zero contrition. Yeah, she's totally anti-American.
And used the term woke too, which was so weird. But no, listen, I think
settle down,
we
Grandma.
should have those conversations. Absolutely not during the national anthem. That solves absolutely nothing. I do like the fact that the NFL is going to be giving money to some of these causes. Put your money where your mouth is and actually start doing something. The players that still say that they're going to kneel, I think, are ridiculous, because now they have created that change. Go out into the community and
go
do
meet with cops and lawmakers.
Absolutely.
Figure out a solution. Come to a mutual agreement.
And if you're going to protest something and stand up there, you have to be precise and you have to know some stuff. And the truth is that there are major problems with the police in America and the way we police, but it's not true. It's just not true that cops are out there gunning down innocent black people. And like when you portray it that way, you lose all credibility.
Yeah, but it's also true that people are scared, and that with social media being able to see some of the really horrific incidents that have happened, which are a small percentage but are still concerning, you know, we have to have this conversation.
Yeah, that's limited abstraction. We need a bigger, more robust intellectual picture, and you're absolutely right about that. Thank you all for being here. So great to see you.
Thank you.
Marie and Dave and Carly, what a great night. Coming up, a new report claims that Mike Pence was so upset with President Trump's Access Hollywood tape that he was part of a plan by Republican billionaire donors to buy the then nominee out of the presidential race. Peter Sitterton joins me with details after the break. An explosive new report in The Atlantic magazine claims that in the immediate aftermath of President Trump's Access Hollywood scandal, then vice presidential candidate Mike Pence was contemplating a ballot coup against Donald Trump. Within hours of the tape, Pence, quote, made it clear to the Republican National Committee that he was ready to take Trump's place as the party's nominee. And a small group of billionaire donors were weighing the possibility of paying Donald Trump $800 million to drop out of the race. But Pence put Pence atop the ticket and draft Condi Rice as his running mate. The president's former chief of staff, Reince Priebus, has called the story 100% false. But in such a crazy election, could this harebrained scheme have actually been true? Joining me now from Reason Magazine, the features editor, Peter Suderman. Welcome back to the show, Peter.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
We're having some nighttime construction here in Times Square, so just getting ready for a big New Year's Eve. Thanks so much for being here. I love this story so much because $800 million is so much money, and it's really funny to me the idea that Donald Trump was presented with this and went, no, I'll pass. I'll take my chances.
I don't know that Donald Trump was ever presented with the $800 million, but yes, it's an incredible amount of money. It is more, it's twice as much as the entire Trump campaign cost and more than the Hillary Clinton campaign cost. I mean, so the presidential election was about $2.4 billion in 2016. Yeah. And so just think about this, $800 million, that's how scared some Republican donors were after the Access Hollywood tape came out, and I think that feeling was shared not by the entire Republican Party, but by a lot of Republicans at that time who thought this is a lost cause. And so what that tells you, the amount tells you, is that those Republican donors saw basically viewed this as an opportunity. Basically, they thought that they were better off buying an entirely new campaign that probably would lose if you have the top guy step off the ticket, that they actually would have better chances if they spent the amount that it costs to run an entire campaign there on a single payment at the last minute.
Interesting. So has Pence always seen himself as a placeholder for this presidency, assuming it would unravel, or as the heir apparent?
Pence is a really interesting guy in some ways. You know, he is the most conventional of conventional Republicans. Kind of came up politically in the 1990s under Clinton, and then came to Congress, was the governor of Indiana. Really a very business-friendly conservative, also a very classic social conservative with ties to the religious right. And he started out being kind of critical of Trump, actually saying that Trump's Muslim ban proposal was unconstitutional. Said this on Twitter. This was not like a privately reported thing, and then ended up accepting the vice presidential nomination, right? Accepting a slot on the ticket. And I think Pence has always seen himself as kind of a steadying hand, a conventional figure in a very unconventional Republican administration.
For him, it was a great political gamble that so far has paid off. And I'm sure there are many people around him and those who analyze politics for a living who think that, you know, Pence has better than an outside shot of becoming president one way or another. I said it. I sang it. Peter Suderman, Computerman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Always a delight. Very smart. Coming up, the people of Phoenix are getting high off a new type of tree. We'll tell you where to find it in the tropical storm. Look at those damn hippies. It's next. I was just doing that. I was getting the lipstick off my teeth to stay classy. Notorious basketball dad LeVar Ball has announced he's pulling his son LiAngelo Ball off the UCLA men's basketball team after LiAngelo was caught shoplifting a pair of sunglasses in China. It won't be easy for the Bruins to replace LiAngelo because he led the team in steals and court time. This is a topical storm. 8 clap, go Bruins. Topic number 1. We begin tonight in glorious Tampa, Florida, where the cops caught a suspected serial killer and the citizens caught a suspected sign language interpreter speaking complete gibberish during the press conference. Here's the Tampa police chief announcing the arrest, and there's the interpreter announcing Applejack, fire truck, roller skate, bingo. A sign language instructor contacted the department and told them the woman was waving her arms around like she was singing Jingle Bells, which doesn't exactly explain the arrest, but does explain why several Christmas carolers were tackled on the street later that night. Sadly, this isn't the only example of this sort of thing happening in the area. Just last week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were accused of impersonating a professional football team. They better hope that doesn't go to trial because Jameis Winston doesn't have a crab leg to stand on in court. Whatever. Topic 2. Dos. Gracias. A California family was reunited with their runaway cat after he was found at a San Francisco animal shelter 80 miles away. Which makes us wonder, can't these people take a hint? How far does this poor cat have to walk to make you realize he hates your guts? The cat's name is Squishy. It might be the first clue as to why he skipped town. And although the family placed a microchip in Squishy's paw, he'd been gone for over a month and they'd feared he'd chase that big laser pointer in the sky. But then a call came from a rescue volunteer that caused Squishy's mom to drop everything and make the 80-mile drive. We are happy to report that Mom and Squishy are now back in Lathrop, California, where she spends her days working from home. And Squishy spends his day tunneling through a wall with a rock hammer. I'll get out of here. Such a sweet story. It's like Alcatraz, only murderous and stinky. Topic number 3. Let's head out to beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where the war on Christmas is being taken to new heights. The city banned Christmas trees from Camelback Mountain because birds were chewing on the ornaments and getting sick. But a mystery Santa decided that ban was for the birds and placed a tree up there with ornaments made of Alka-Seltzer. Not really. The ornaments are made of bird seed, animal lovers. And as of now, the city is leaving up the tree along with signs asking people to take their garbage when they leave. And to be doubly sure that every last hitchhiker gets the point, or hiker rather, they're not hitchhiking up there. Everyone drives in Phoenix. They've even brought in a top-notch sign language interpreter. There she is. All the stoned hikers are like, I think she wants to play Pictionary? Or is she showing us her brooch? Okay. Topic number 4. Go Cardinals. Everybody likes to joke that the entire state of Colorado has become a haven for stoners with the munchies since they legalized weed. But if that were true, would In-N-Out Burger really be opening 50 new restaurants in the Centennial State? Okay, so that's a bad example. But unlike Brian Ross's reports, it's a true story. And you don't have to be a stoner to be excited about it because In-N-Out is the best burger on the planet. And anyone who tells you different is a heretic who deserves to be burned at the stake and shake. Now I know some of you will say, hey, Canadalia, what about Shake Shack or Smash Burger or even Five Guys? Shake Shack is solid, but the fries aren't gluten-free. Smash Burger is pretty good. And I haven't had Five Guys since college. But from what I remember, they were all pretty handsome. Hey-o! Ba-da-da-da-da! Ba-da-da-da-da! the rent doesn't pay itself. Topic number 5. God rest your soul, Johnny Carson. Taken from us too soon. Finally, visitors at the Cincinnati Zoo said goodbye to popular hippo Fiona yesterday as she made her last appearance of the year, not on Earth. She's going into hibernation for the winter. It's an emotional time for the people of Cincinnati because not only is hippo season finished, but the Bengals season is also pretty much finished after the team lost to the Steelers last night to fall to 5-7. However, unlike Bengals coach Marvin Lewis, Fiona is expected to make a comeback next year. Zookeepers say the 600-pound superstar could even be heavier. Yeah, girl. They've tried talking to her, but it turns out you can't fat shame a girl whose very species is a fat shaming term. Yeah, I think she's pretty hot. Coming up, there's the music. It's been 84 years since the repeal of Prohibition. What better way to celebrate than to pour yourself a nightcap? Have a tipple next. Oh, happy Repeal Day. 84 years ago today, back on December 5th, 1933, the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment and legal booze was back in business. Prohibition, of course, was a rough time in American history. The temperance movement claimed alcohol caused all of society's problems, and cutting it out completely would put an end to poverty, mental illness, and crime. Except for it didn't. Prisons filled up, the crime and murder rate skyrocketed, and people kept doing what people do, boozing. It's the same climate today. Cannabis has been prohibited since roughly the same time legal alcohol went on its comeback tour. And with half of all drug arrests being the weed variety, prisons are bulging with people caught up in an unnecessary enforcement net. 10 years ago, Mexican drug cartels were raking in almost $9 billion a year selling pot to eager union beavers. And as of 2013, over 120,000 people have died being caught up in the Mexican drug war alone. Now compare that with Colorado, that has seen a $1 billion windfall from its legal cannabis market and $20 billion taxable dollars estimated to pour into the U.S. in marijuana sales in 2 years. Now add to that opioid deaths plummet by 25% in states where cannabis is legal because it's available and safer and people don't die when they use it. Prohibition squashes civil liberties, and even if you disagree with the methods, anything less than freedom is madness. Thank you so much for being part of the show tonight. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. You know it, at Kennedy Nation. Facebook, it's Kennedy FBN. Email KennedyFBN@foxbusiness.com. We love getting your cards and letters. Tomorrow night on the show, former Ambassador John Bolton, Pete Hegseth, and Katie Pavlich. They're all going to wrestle in a vat of Crisco. And that will be sexy hot freedom in one way or another. Good night.